If you love intense HFY stories where humanity turns fear into strength, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next battle. Your support helps this channel bring you more powerful sci-fi stories full of emotion, strategy, and unforgettable human moments. The day Admiral Valora Sin brought Raylos to Varkan Military Academy, the entire training amphitheater changed before the creature even entered it. Cadets from 7 warrior species stood in disciplined rows along the observation tiers, pretending not to be impressed by the number of armed containment officers moving around the lower arena. The academy was used to dangerous things. It trained siege pilots, shock infantry, orbital boarding teams, and diplomatic security units who had to smile politely while calculating how many exits a room had. But this was different. This was not a captured beast for spectacle, not a training animal, and not a trophy dragged in to frighten young soldiers into humility. Raylos was a living war drake from the Ash Meridian front, a creature so rare that most cadets had only seen old battlefield recordings of his kind moving through smoke like armored thunder. He had been recovered by Admiral Sin after the collapse of an enemy weapons vault, and since then, every handler, scientist, and restraint officer who tried to approach him had learned the same lesson in a different painful language. Raylos did not tolerate ownership. The arena gates opened with a deep mechanical groan, and the sound moved through the cadet ranks like a warning. Raylos came forward slowly, not dragged, not forced, but escorted behind layered restraint fields that flickered around his plated body like heat around black stone. He was enormous, low-shouldered and long-necked, with 4 heavy limbs, folded wing structures armored along the spine, and 2 crown-like horn ridges sweeping back from a skull large enough to crush a ground car if he ever felt professionally motivated. His eyes were not wild. That was what made him worse. They were focused, intelligent, and deeply unimpressed with the room. A few cadets shifted despite themselves. Rowan Cade, standing near the human exchange marker with his hands folded behind his back, stared at the war drake and murmured, "So that's the guest lecturer. Great. Nothing says higher education like a dragon who looks like he eats final exams for emotional balance." The cadet beside him, a broad-shouldered Koran named Javik, gave him a flat look. "That creature has broken soldiers twice your size." Rowan nodded without taking his eyes off Raylos. "Good to know the Academy believes in equal opportunity trauma." Javik's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, Admiral Sin stepped onto the command platform above the arena. She was tall, silver-skinned, severe in a dark fleet coat, and carried the kind of silence that made decorated instructors straighten without being ordered. Raylos saw her and stopped. No restraint officer gave a command. No device forced him still. He simply stopped because Admiral Sin had raised one hand. That small act did more to quiet the amphitheater than any alarm could have. The Admiral looked across the cadets and said, "You have heard stories. Some are exaggerated, most are not." Raylos attacked every armed approach team assigned to him after recovery. He resisted containment crews, rejected sedation teams, and destroyed 3 remote harness rigs. "I was the first person he did not attack." That statement settled heavily over the arena. It was not bragging. Admiral Sin did not speak like someone who needed witnesses to admire her. She spoke like someone placing a dangerous fact on a table. Today's evaluation is not a contest of strength. It is not a dominance trial. It is not an invitation to prove courage through stupidity. The proximity accord evaluation measures whether an officer can stand near power without challenging it, provoking it, or mistaking survival for trust. She turned her gaze toward the cadet ranks, and even Rowan stopped smirking for a moment. Some of you may hold the line. A few may redirect his attention. 1 or 2 may subdue a reaction long enough to pass, but understand this clearly. Subduing is not trust. If you confuse the two, Raylos will correct you faster than I can. The first cadet entered with the confidence of someone built by generations of war songs. His species had bone armor across the chest and arms, and he carried a shield emitter calibrated to project calm pressure fields without causing harm. He approached the marked boundary, lowered his center of gravity, and held the field steady when Raylos turned toward him. The war drake's throat rumbled. The floor vibrated. The cadet did not retreat. Raylos surged forward once, fast enough that several observers hissed, but the pressure field caught the edge of his movement and redirected him 3 steps sideways. The cadet survived 40 seconds before the Admiral ended the trial. The amphitheater applauded. Rowan tilted his head. Technically impressive, he muttered. Emotionally, that looked like arguing with a landslide using a polite wall. The next cadet used command harmonics, a low vocal resonance supported by throat implants. Raylos paused, not soothed but momentarily interrupted, as if the sound had placed a hand on a door he had been about to break. That cadet also passed. Another warrior managed a shield stance hold and forced Raylos to circle without charging. The instructors looked satisfied. The cadets began whispering with more confidence. Maybe the impossible creature was not impossible. Maybe Admiral Sin had brought him here to be classified after all. Then the fourth cadet, taller than the rest and eager to turn competence into legend, crossed the trust boundary after his timer had already ended. Admiral Sin's voice cut down from the platform. "Cadet Varro, stop." Varro did not. He lifted one hand toward Raylos's neck crest, smiling as if the whole academy were about to witness history. Raylos moved with terrifying restraint. He did not bite. He did not tear. He simply struck the cadet with one armored shoulder and sent him skidding across the arena floor until his shield harness screamed and locked him in place. The amphitheater went silent. Medics rushed in. Varro was alive, conscious, and humiliated so completely that his pride seemed more injured than his body. Raylos stood over the boundary line, eyes burning, not victorious, not enraged, only insulted. Admiral Sin descended one step from the platform, her face colder than before. Let the record show Cadet Varro survived proximity, then failed respect. She looked over the entire academy, and her voice lowered into something sharper than anger. Remember that before you confuse permission with conquest. Rowan Cade exhaled slowly and whispered, "Well, that was the clearest syllabus correction I've ever seen." After Cadet Varro was carried from the arena with his body mostly intact and his pride in several smaller pieces, the amphitheater lost its earlier excitement. No one laughed now. Even the cadets who had mocked Rowan Cade's comments stood quieter, watching Raylos with the hard attention soldiers gave to loaded weapons. The Wardrake had returned to the center of the containment floor, his armored tail sweeping once across the black surface, his horned head lowered just enough to make every movement look like a warning. Admiral Valora Sin remained on the command platform above him, hands folded behind her back, expression unreadable. The instructors whispered among themselves, their confidence slightly cracked but not gone. They had expected danger. Danger was useful. Danger made cadets sharper. What they had not expected was how clearly Raylos seemed to understand insult. Rowan leaned a little closer to the viewing rail and muttered, "So, official lesson so far. Do not touch the ancient war dragon without consent. Bold new military doctrine." Javik glared at him. "You make jokes because you are nervous." Rowan nodded. "Correct. I also breathe because I enjoy oxygen. We all have habits." The next evaluations continued, but the mood had changed. The fifth cadet was a Sarn warrior with 4 arms, reinforced joint plating, and a battlefield record simulation score high enough to make most academy officers speak to him with visible respect. He entered with no arrogance, only discipline. His method was pressure positioning. He never crossed the trust boundary, never reached for Raylos, and never looked directly into the Wardrake's eyes for more than half a second. Instead, he used small controlled steps and a wide defensive stance to shape the space between them. Raylos advanced once, twice, then stopped when the cadet held his ground without challenge. It was impressive. Even Rowan could admit that. The cadet lasted a full minute before Admiral Sin ended the trial. Applause followed, stronger than before, relieved and hungry for proof that the academy still understood what it was doing. "Evaluation pass," the senior instructor announced. "Stable proximity under pressure." Admiral Sin did not applaud. She only made a note on her slate. Rowan watched her instead of the cadet. "She didn't like that one," he said quietly. Javik frowned. "He passed." "Yeah," Rowan said. "And if this were a furniture delivery, I'd be very proud. He moved the big thing without dying. Doesn't mean the big thing liked him." Another cadet entered, this one from a species known for command resonance. Her voice could vibrate through armor joints and nervous systems with carefully controlled frequency. She stood at the line and began a low harmonic tone, not painful, not loud, but powerful enough to make the water in the observation glasses tremble. Raylos turned toward her. His pupils narrowed. The tone shifted, and for 3 seconds the Wardrake lowered his head. The academy reacted with a sharp inhale. It looked almost like obedience. The instructor's face brightened. Then Rowan saw Raylos's claws dig into the floor. Not relaxed, anchored, enduring. The cadet increased the tone by a fraction, trying to hold the moment longer. Raylo snapped his head up and roared so hard the resonance shattered against the containment field. The cadet stumbled backward, lost her tone, and dropped to one knee. The safety system ended the trial. Partial success, the instructor said quickly. Command interruption achieved. Rowan scratched his jaw. If someone sang at me until I sat down, I would also call that a partial success. Then I'd avoid their birthday party forever. That earned him a warning look from one of the assistant instructors, but Admiral Sin's gaze shifted toward him for the first time. Not angry, measuring. Rowan straightened a little, which somehow made him look less guilty and more guilty at the same time. She looked away, but not before he noticed something else. Raylos had not reacted to her attention the way he reacted to the cadets. When Admiral Sin moved, he tracked her, yes, but without tension. When others moved near the controls, his shoulders tightened. When she spoke, his neck lowered a fraction, not submissively, more like a soldier hearing a voice he had decided was worth considering. Rowan's humor quieted for the first time since the evaluation began. Javik noticed. What? Rowan kept his eyes on the arena. He doesn't obey her. She is the admiral who recovered him. That's not what I said, Javik huffed. Then what are you saying? Rowan leaned on the rail, thoughtful now. He agrees with her. That's annoyingly important. The final cadet before Rowan was Javik himself. He entered like a monument that had learned to walk. His species valued courage, but Javik was not stupid. He had listened. He did not reach. He did not shout. He held a shield discipline pattern and used no unnecessary movement. Raylos circled him slowly, testing posture, breath, and nerve. Javik's jaw clenched, but he did not retreat. For 90 seconds, he survived the war drake's attention. It was the best result of the day. The amphitheater thundered with approval when the trial ended. Even Admiral Sin gave one slow nod. Javik returned to the line breathing hard, scales damp with stress but standing proud. Rowan gave him a small salute. That was genuinely impressive. I only hated about 12% of it. Javik looked at him, still catching his breath. Your turn, human. Rowan's smile faded as his name appeared above the arena gate. The senior instructor announced, Cadet Rowan Cade, Earth Exchange Division. A ripple of amusement moved through the tiers, nervous but eager. Rowan stepped away from the rail and sighed. Wonderful. I was hoping to be eaten after lunch, but I respect the schedule. Then he walked toward the gate as Raylos turned his massive head and watched him come. The arena gate opened for Rowan Cade with a slow mechanical groan that sounded, to him, unnecessarily theatrical. He stepped through anyway, hands loose at his sides, dark Earth Exchange uniform looking painfully plain against the Academy's polished combat armor and ceremonial rank colors. The lower arena felt much larger from inside it. The observation tiers rose around him like a bowl full of judgment, every alien cadet watching to see how quickly the fragile human would make the day entertaining. At the center of the containment floor, Raylos turned fully toward him. The war drake's plated shoulders shifted, each movement heavy enough to make the light ripple across his black-scaled armor. His horned head lowered by a fraction. His wings flexed once along his spine. Rowan stopped just inside the entry line and looked at the marked truss boundary painted across the floor. Right, he said softly, though the arena microphones carried it everywhere. Stand near ancient war drake, avoid becoming historical paste, maintain academic dignity, love a clear assignment. A few cadets laughed from the tiers, but it died quickly when Rowan did something none of the others had done. He reached slowly to his sidearm, unfastened it with 2 fingers and placed it on the floor behind him before stepping toward the marked line. The senior instructor leaned forward at once. Cadet Cade, standard procedure requires you to remain armed until the trial begins. Rowan did not look back. With respect, instructor, if the solution becomes shooting the dragon, I'm already underqualified. A nervous ripple moved through the room. Javik's eyes narrowed from the cadet rail. Admiral Valora Sin did not move, but her attention sharpened. Raylos saw the weapon left behind. His eyes tracked Rowan's empty hands, then lifted to his face. Rowan kept his chin slightly angled away, not looking directly into the war drake's eyes for more than a heartbeat at a time. He stopped at the boundary, breathed once, and turned his body sideways rather than square himself like a challenger. Hey, he said, voice calm and conversational. I'm Rowan. You are terrifying. I respect that as a personal brand, Raylos growled. It was not loud at first, but it traveled through the floor into Rowan's boots and climbed up his bones. Every instinct in him suggested that stepping backward would be a perfectly rational life choice. His left hand trembled once. He closed it slowly, not into a fist, just enough to stop the movement from becoming a message. "Yep," he murmured, "that is a very fair review of my introduction." The wardrake advanced one step. The containment officers tensed. One reached toward a control rod. Raylos's head snapped toward that movement and the growl deepened instantly. Rowan saw it. So did Admiral Sin. "Nobody touch the controls," Rowan said. The instructor barked, "Cadet, you do not issue arena commands." Rowan's eyes stayed on Raylos. "Then consider it a polite request from the guy currently closest to the teeth." Admiral Sin raised one hand. The containment officer froze. Raylos's tension did not vanish, but it stopped climbing. Rowan crossed the marked line. The entire amphitheater seemed to inhale at once. Raylos surged forward, not a full charge, but fast enough that several cadets flinched. Rowan did not run. He shifted one step aside, slow and open, giving the wardrake space instead of blocking him. "Not here to win," Rowan said, more to steady his own breathing than anything else. "Honestly, I didn't even want to be nominated. Democracy has failed me personally." Raylos stopped within 3 body lengths. His nostrils widened. Rowan felt warm breath move over his uniform. The creature was close enough now for Rowan to see old scars across the horn ridges, not fresh wounds, not the simple, easy explanation of pain, but history written into armor. This was not a beast waiting to be commanded. This was a survivor deciding whether another uniform meant another problem. The senior instructor's voice came through the arena speakers. "Lower now. Cadet Cade, hold position." Rowan almost laughed. "Very good advice. I was about to start tap dancing." No one laughed this time. Raylos stepped closer. Rowan lowered himself slowly to one knee, not in surrender, not in worship, but because standing tall had looked like challenge every time someone else did it. The movement made the observation tears stir. Javik whispered, "What is he doing?" Admiral Sin answered without looking away. "He is making himself less sharp." Rowan placed one hand flat on his own thigh and kept the other open near his side. "There," he said quietly. "No big speech. No heroic posture, just a tired human having a deeply questionable school experience." Raylos came within arm's reach. The wardrake's head hovered above him, massive, dark, and impossibly still. Rowan could feel his own pulse hammering, and he knew Raylos could probably hear it. "Yeah," Rowan whispered. "I'm scared. Not going to insult you by pretending otherwise." Raylos's eyes narrowed. Rowan swallowed. "But scared doesn't mean hostile. It just means my body has correctly identified you as a major architectural hazard." The wardrake lowered his head another inch. Rowan did not reach for him. He did not take the moment. He waited. The arena remained silent, every cadet, instructor, and officer trapped inside the impossible pause. Then Raylos exhaled, slow and hot, and stopped so close that the edge of one horn nearly brushed Rowan's shoulder. Rowan looked up just enough to see him without challenging him and said, very softly, "Okay, big guy. Your move." The trial timer passed 2 minutes. No cadet had ever been this close without force, pressure, or command. And Raylos had not attacked. For a long moment, the entire Varkin Military Academy forgot how to breathe. Rowan Cade knelt inside the truss boundary, with Raylos standing close enough to end his military career. Academic record and basic skeletal arrangement in one casual motion. The wardrake's horn hovered near Rowan's shoulder, his plated chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths, while every containment officer in the arena looked like they were fighting the same terrible urge to press every emergency control at once. Rowan could feel them behind him, not with some heroic instinct, but because nervous people made noise even when they tried not to. Armor shifted, boots scraped. One officer's glove creaked around a shock rod. Raylos heard it too. His head angled toward the sound, and the calm Rowan had spent 2 minutes building thinned like glass under pressure. Rowan lifted one hand slightly, palm down, not toward the dragon but toward the officers. "I am begging everyone with buttons, rods, cables, degrees, or deeply dramatic job titles to stay extremely boring right now." The senior instructor's voice came down through the speakers, tight and offended. "Cadet Cade, you are beyond approved proximity. Withdraw slowly." Rowan did not turn his head. "I would love to retreat professionally, instructor, but your giant dragon has parked his face in my personal weather system." A few cadets made strangled sounds that might have become laughter in any other room. Raylos shifted one claw forward and the sounds died. Admiral Valera Sin raised her hand before the instructor could speak again. "Silence," she said. The word cut cleanly through the amphitheater. "No commands, no rods, no field adjustment." The instructor looked up at her. "Admiral, if the creature strikes, then your shouting will not improve the situation." Her eyes stayed on Rowan and Raylos. "Let the cadet finish what he started." Rowan heard the Admiral and wished he found that comforting. He did not. There was a difference between being trusted and being abandoned to consequences with excellent posture. Raylos lowered his head another fraction, his eyes fixed on Rowan's open hand. Rowan understood the trap in the moment. Every cadet before him had tried to take success. They had forced space, shaped movement, used pressure, sound, stance, discipline, and pride. Even the ones who passed had acted like the arena was a problem, and Raylos was the dangerous part of that problem. Rowan slowly raised his hand halfway, then stopped. Not because he was afraid to continue, though he absolutely was, but because the choice could not be his. "I'm not grabbing the Royal Nightmare Lizard," he whispered. That feels like a sentence that ends badly in 12 languages. Raylos's nostrils flared. Rowan kept his hand still in the air, open, waiting. "Your call, big guy." The pause stretched so long Rowan's shoulder began to ache. His hand trembled once and he almost lowered it, but Raylos moved first. The Wardrake leaned forward, slow and deliberate, until the hard ridge above his eye touched Rowan's palm. The contact was light, almost impossibly careful for something that had thrown armored cadets across the arena. Rowan froze, not from fear this time, from the strange weight of being chosen by something everyone else had only survived. The amphitheater stayed silent. Somewhere above, someone dropped a data slate and did not pick it up. Rowan let out the breath he had been holding and said softly, "Well, that's either trust or I'm about to become a cautionary diagram." Raylos did not move away. Rowan's fingers settled gently against the dark-plated crest. He did not stroke at first. He only rested his hand there, letting the creature feel no command in it. Admiral Sin's expression changed by the smallest amount, which for her was nearly a public emotional collapse. She had stood near Raylos. She had made him choose not to attack, but this was different. She had earned stillness through presence, authority, and some private understanding forged on the Ash Meridian front. Rowan had earned permission through restraint, not dominance, not rank, not control, permission. Javik stood at the rail with his mouth slightly open. "He is touching him," he whispered. The cadet beside him answered, "No." Raylos touched him first. That correction moved through the tier faster than applause would have. It mattered. Everyone felt that it mattered, even if most of them did not yet know why. Rowan finally moved his fingers once gently, along the edge of the crest where the plates overlapped. Raylos's eyes half closed. The containment officers looked horrified, as if relaxation were somehow more dangerous than rage because none of their manuals had prepared for it. Rowan noticed and murmured, "Don't worry, everyone. I have no idea what I'm doing either." Very inclusive moment. Raylos gave a low rumble, not a warning this time, but something deeper and quieter. The sound vibrated through Rowan's knees. It was not submission. It was not obedience. It was closer to the sound of a storm deciding, for now, not to break the windows. Then Raylos folded his front limbs beneath him and lowered his massive body to the arena floor beside Rowan. Not fully resting, not tame, not harmless, but near. Willingly near. Rowan sat back carefully, because his legs had started informing him that bravery was not a long-term position. The Wardrake's head remained close to his hand. Rowan looked up toward Admiral Sin with the tired expression of a man who had just accidentally passed a test no one had understood. "For the record," he called, "I would like extra credit, emotional compensation, and possibly new pants." This time the laughter did come, nervous, disbelieving, and brief. Admiral Sin did not laugh, but something like respect entered her eyes. "Evaluation suspended," she said. "No one enters the arena." Rowan looked down at Raylos, whose great head had settled inches from his knee. "Yeah," he whispered. "Good call. I think he's done being examined." The evaluation should have ended there, with Rowan Cade sitting on the arena floor beside the most dangerous living creature Varkan Military Academy had ever contained. One hand still resting carefully against Raylos's plated head crest, while the entire amphitheater tried to decide whether it had witnessed military progress or a very slow, nervous breakdown. Admiral Valor Sin had ordered the arena sealed, no further cadets admitted, no containment rods touched, no command fields adjusted. For once, every officer obeyed. Even the senior instructor looked too stunned to argue properly. Raylos remained close to Rowan, not asleep, not harmless, but quiet in a way that felt more meaningful than any formal pass score. Rowan glanced up at the tiers and saw hundreds of cadets staring down at him like he had just rewritten physics with a bad attitude. "Just so everyone knows," he called, keeping his voice gentle enough not to disturb the wardrake, "this was not my plan. My plan involved standing over there, not dying, and maybe making one respectable joke. We have gone wildly off syllabus." A few nervous laughs moved through the tier, but Admiral Sin did not smile. She was watching Raylos. The wardrake's calm had changed. His head lifted from Rowan's hand by a slow inch. The plates along his spine tightened one after another, not in anger but in recognition. Rowan felt it before he understood it. The creature was not looking at him anymore. Raylos was looking past the arena, past the cadets, past the instructors, toward the Eastern Observation Gallery where visiting weapons delegates sat behind polished security glass. Rowan followed his gaze. "That seems bad," he murmured. "That is the face people make right before alarms learn new hobbies." One of the containment officers reached for a control panel, and Raylos's throat filled with a warning growl so deep it made dust tremble on the floor. "Do not touch that," Rowan said sharply. The officer froze. The senior instructor snapped, "Cadet Cade, step away from the creature." Rowan slowly rose to one knee, never turning his back on Raylos. "I would love to, but your creature is currently pointing at a problem none of you are seeing." Admiral Sin's eyes moved to the Eastern Gallery, and her expression sharpened into something colder than command. "Security, sweep the delegation tier." Before the order could complete, the gallery lights flickered black, then came back red. A thin pulse of sound moved through the amphitheater, too low for most species to hear clearly, but strong enough to make every containment field ripple. Raylos roared, but not at Rowan. He roared at the gallery. Training drones unfolded from the ceiling in perfect academy formation, their identification lights shifting from blue to hostile red. The cadet tiers erupted. "Drones are live," someone shouted. "They are not responding to Academy command." A beam snapped downward and struck the shield barrier above the lower seats. Cadets scattered. Admiral Sin did not move. She stood in the gallery as 3 drones pivoted toward her platform. Rowan looked at Raylos, then at the drones, then at the observation tier. "Good news, Admiral," he shouted. "Your dragon passed the test." "Bad news, apparently everyone else is failing it." Raylos moved before the drones fired. He did not charge randomly. He crossed the arena with Rowan scrambling beside him, and the terrifying part was not his speed but his precision. He slammed one shoulder into the nearest security pylon, knocking its targeting array upward, so the first drone volley burned into the ceiling instead of the cadet section. Rowan ducked under a flying shard of glass and yelled, "I appreciate the teamwork, but next time maybe signal before redecorating the arena." Raylos gave a short, thunderous rumble that somehow sounded like disagreement. On the Eastern Gallery, a delegate in ceremonial gray robes tried to back away from a device hidden beneath his sleeve. Admiral Sin saw it. So did Rowan. The device pulsed again, and Raylos's eyes narrowed with unmistakable hatred. Not madness, memory. Rowan understood then. "That thing is calling him," he shouted, "not controlling him, calling him like an enemy." The senior instructor shouted over the chaos, "All units prepare to neutralize Raylos." Rowan spun toward him, furious for the first time. "Nobody shoots the dragon. He found the assassin before your expensive ceiling toys did." The hidden device triggered the second phase of the sabotage. The arena doors locked, not to keep Raylos in, but to keep rescue teams out. More drones dropped from the ceiling. Their weapons targeting the Admiral's gallery and the cadet rose nearest the exits. Raylos planted himself between the drones and the crowded tier. Rowan ran beneath his neck, grabbed a fallen command baton from the floor, and jammed it into a maintenance socket near the inner barrier. "I need someone smart and not currently screaming to tell me if this opens the lower service gate." Javik's voice answered from the tier above, shaken but steady. "It will overload the barrier if you reverse the feed." Rowan looked at the sparking socket. "Fantastic. I love when the answer is almost safe." Javik dropped down from the observation ledge with 2 other cadets and slammed his shield emitter against the barrier frame. "Do it, human!" Rowan grinned despite the chaos. "Look at us, Friendship through shared terrible choices. The barrier opened for 3 seconds, enough for several trapped cadets to crawl through before the drones corrected. One drone dove toward them. Raylo struck it out of the air with his tail and pinned it to the arena floor under one claw, crushing its weapon core without touching the cadets beneath it. The amphitheater saw that. The admiral saw it. Even the instructors saw it. Raylo's was not rampaging, he was choosing targets. Rowan pointed toward the eastern gallery. Big guy, gray robe, shiny murder bracelet. Raylo's head turned. The saboteur ran. Admiral Sin stepped into his path with a blade drawn, but a drone pivoted toward her back. Rowan saw it too late. Raylo's did not. The Wardrake launched forward, not at the Admiral but around her, smashing the drone into the gallery wall with such controlled violence that the impact shook the whole amphitheater. The saboteur collapsed under Sin's boot a second later. Silence did not return all at once. It came in pieces after the last drone fell, after the red lights died, after the Academy security system finally stopped trying to murder its own audience. Rowan stood beside Raylo's in the center of the damaged arena, breathing hard, hands shaking openly now. He looked up at Admiral Sin, who still held the captured device in one hand. "So," Rowan said, voice rough, "do I still fail for leaving my weapon outside the line?" Admiral Sin looked from him to Raylo's, then to the cadets the Wardrake had protected. "No, Cadet Cade," she said quietly. "I believe the test has just changed." The official record would later call the sabotage attempt a controlled security breach, because military institutions loved making disaster sound like paperwork with better posture. Everyone who had actually been inside the amphitheater knew better. The arena floor was scarred with drone fire. Half the eastern gallery was cracked open. 3 security pylons were dead, and the strongest cadets of Varkin Military Academy were standing in stunned silence around a Wardrake they had spent all morning trying to survive. Raylo stood at the center of the damage with his plated chest rising slowly, one claw still resting on the crushed frame of the last training drone. He was not roaring. He was not striking. He was watching. That was what made the room quiet. Not fear. Understanding. The creature they had called unstable had chosen targets more carefully than half the Academy's automated defenses. He had protected the cadet Rose, shielded Admiral Valora Sin's gallery, and crushed the threat without harming a single bystander. Rowan Cade stood beside him, breathing hard, his uniform torn at the shoulder, one cheek cut from flying glass, and his expression stuck somewhere between exhaustion and disbelief. "I would like to file a formal complaint," he said into the silence. "Your safety drill tried to assassinate us." No one laughed at first. Then one cadet made a sound, then another, until a short nervous wave moved through the amphitheater and died almost immediately when Raylos turned his head. Rowan patted the air with both hands. "Relax, he likes tasteful humor. Probably. We are still workshopping the friendship." Admiral Sin descended from the observation gallery with the captured resonance device held in one gloved hand. 2 security officers dragged the gray-robed saboteur behind her, wrists locked and face drained of all arrogance. The Admiral did not look at him. She looked at Raylos, then at Rowan. "Cadet Cade," she said, voice low enough that the whole room had to lean into it. "When the device activated, you claimed Raylos was not attacking. You said he was identifying the threat." Rowan wiped blood from his cheek with the back of his hand. "Yes, Admiral. How did you know?" Rowan glanced at the Wardrake, who was watching the captured saboteur with deep, ancient dislike. "Because he wasn't looking at us. Everyone else saw teeth and panic. He was staring at the source." Also, when a dragon ignores hundreds of delicious cadets and focuses on one suspicious politician, I try not to interrupt the detective work. Admiral Sin's mouth moved as if she almost smiled, but discipline murdered the expression before it lived. That device was tuned to an enemy command resonance used during the Ash Meridian occupation. It was designed to provoke a violent response and make Raylos appear unfit for integration. The senior instructor went pale. "They wanted him blamed." "Yes," Sin said, "and they nearly succeeded because we were prepared to believe the worst of him." The words did not accuse loudly, but they struck the amphitheater harder than shouting. Javik stepped down onto the arena floor, shield emitter hanging uselessly at his side. He looked at Rowan, then at Raylos, then at the crushed drone near the lower cadet gate. "He saved us," he said, as if the sentence was difficult to build. Rowan nodded. "Yeah, try not to sound so offended by survival." Javik lowered his head, not fully bowing but close. "I was wrong." Rowan looked genuinely uncomfortable. That is a dangerous habit. People start expecting growth. Raylos moved then, and every weapon in the room almost rose by memory. Admiral Sin lifted one hand, and this time the guard stopped before Rowan had to shout. The Wardrake stepped past Javik, past the instructors, past the broken drones and torn floor plating, and came straight to Rowan. Rowan stood very still. "Okay," he murmured. "We are doing the intense eye contact thing again. Love that for us." But Raylos did not challenge him. He lowered his massive head slowly, carefully, until the heavy horn crest came level with Rowan's chest. Rowan exhaled. The adrenaline that had kept him upright began abandoning him with rude efficiency. His knees softened and he sat down hard on the arena floor. "That was intentional," he said weakly. "Strategic sitting." Raylos watched him for one long breath, then folded his front limbs beneath himself and lowered his head into Rowan's lap. The amphitheater went silent in a way Rowan had never heard before. Not shocked silence. Reverent silence. Raylos was not pinned by pressure, not held by harmonics, not redirected by shields, not managed by rank. He had chosen to rest there, beside the one cadet who had not demanded obedience from him. Rowan looked down at the Wardrake's head, then up at Admiral Sin. "For the record, Admiral, I did not plan this either." Sin stepped closer, her face unreadable but her eyes changed. "Cadet Cade, how did you command him?" Rowan gave a tired laugh and rested one hand lightly against Raylos's crest. "I didn't. That was kind of the point." He looked around at the strongest cadets, the instructors, the containment officers, and the officials who had all prepared for force before understanding. Everybody kept asking how much power it took to control him. Turns out he was waiting for someone to stop acting like everything powerful needed a leash. Admiral Sin stood in silence for several seconds. Then she turned to the Academy recorders. "The Proximity Accord evaluation is suspended pending redesign. Raylos will no longer be classified as a controllable asset. He will be classified as an allied intelligence under guarded diplomatic protocol." The senior instructor looked shaken. "Admiral, that changes the entire program." Sin's gaze remained on Rowan and the Wardrake. "Good." It was apparently teaching the wrong lesson. One by one, the cadets lowered their weapons. Javik was first. Others followed. Rowan leaned back against Raylos's warm-plated head and closed his eyes for a moment. "Great," he murmured. "I came here for officer training and accidentally invented dragon diplomacy." Raylos rumbled softly, and Rowan smiled despite himself. The Academy had spent all morning proving its strongest cadets could subdue a beast. Rowan Cade had shown them something far more dangerous to the galaxy. Humans could earn the trust of things no one else could safely touch.